Hello Logic language learners. So welcome to a video that is that's taking something I think we're all pretty good at and knocking it up a level. So if you hear terms mentioned in this video that you are not familiar with, please have a little look-see at the videos to the right of the screen and go through the previous videos and find the videos that are necessary for dealing with this. So these will include how to do the reflexives in the past. So I've talked about that in a few videos. I will possibly try and find the link to that video and stick it underneath as well. Other things that I'm going to be writing out will be, other things that I'm talking about will be written underneath and will be all there under the description. And as I say, normally if you can't find it in the description, find the little arrow, click on the little arrow that is under the screen and have a look there under under the screen, under the image. Right, so what we're doing today is really important, and it's just to distinguish between two types of verbs that that you will be using if you want to speak French at all in any decent capacity, but doing something slightly different than some of you may be used to. So what are we talking about? We are talking about using reflexive verbs that then go on to talk about other stuff. I mean, that's a really dumb, non-grammatical way of explaining it, but that is what it is. So up until now, and perhaps those of you who have been focusing on, trying to perfect your reflexive verbs, what have we done? We've basically covered verbs where, and when you will learn them, particularly at the beginning, you kind of learn the verbs of preparation. So, I get ready, je me prépare, je me rase, je me lève, je me lave. What else do we do? Je me réveille, I wake up. Je me couche, I go to bed. So these are verbs where you are not only the person doing the verb, you are the person on the receiving end of the verb. And you will go, yes, Luke, that's why they're called reflexive verbs, so that should be the end of it. And so when you say those sentences, you're finished. And we've looked at doing those in the past, and as we've talked about, the method in French to stick a reflexive verb in the past is what we call, or what I call, the poetry past system. So this basically reminds us that we have, instead of trying to remember every time I, myself, and then the verb to be, we know that if we are using a reflexive verb in the past, it will take être. So je me suis, tu t'es, il s'est, nous sommes, vous êtes, ils se sont, plus the past word. And this is a technique that we call poetry past. So for example, I said would be j'ai dit, but I said to myself, je me suis dit. Okay? He said to himself, il s'est dit. And we've talked about this quite recently. We've said that some of these verbs are verbs that you always tend to use reflexively. You tend to say s'habiller to get yourself dressed. Je me suis habillé. Se raser. You don't often shave other people or other things. You might do, whatever your kink is. And then we've said how some of these verbs are normal verbs that we often use them with avoir. It's just on this occasion we're using them on yourself. So for example, I said j'ai dit, je me suis dit, I said to myself. I examined, j'ai examiné. I as a doctor examine the patient, j'ai examiné le patient. I examine myself, je me suis examiné. So we've talked about that. So we're comfortable basically with poetry past, which is je me suis, tu t'es, il s'est, nous sommes, vous êtes, ils se sont, plus the past participle. Right, so what's today all about? Today is saying that often that's not it. That's not where we finish. We have other things that need to come up. So this is when you use a verb which has the reflexive in it and will then connect to something else. And this will either be with que or de, or you will use something in the verb. So here are some examples, okay? If you were saying the verb to, to deal with, s'occuper, s'occuper. So I look after something, je m'occupe de quelque chose. Okay, je m'occupe de quelque chose. You might be comfortable with that. Je m'occupe du projet. I'm looking after the project. If you had I looked after the project, then yes, just like normal, it's going to be a reflexive verb which is going in the past, which means I'm going to have to use the poetry past system. So, je me suis occupé. But, whereas up until now, most of the poetry parts that we've done have been stuff you've done to yourself. Je me suis lavé, je me suis réveillé, je me suis... all the ones we've just covered. This is a verb where it's kind of like saying, I am occupying myself in the process of doing something else. So I dealt with something, je me suis occupé de whatever I'm dealing with. Okay? So, I'm going to give you some present tenses, and I want you to stick them in these action pasts. Okay? So let's say I'm giving you, I'm looking after the children, je m'occupe des enfants, je m'occupe des enfants, I looked after the children, je me suis occupé des enfants. Okay? I speak to him, we speak to each other. No, where am I going with this? That's coming in a second with on. I remember I remember what happened. Je me souviens de ce qui s'est passé. Je me souviens de ce qui s'est passé. I remember what happened. I remembered what happened. Yeah, je me suis souvenu de ce qui s'est passé. Je me suis souvenu de ce qui s'est passé. I am getting rid of my shoes. Je me débarrasse de mes chaussures. I got rid of my shoes. Je me suis débarrassé de mes chaussures. Okay? I realize, je me rends compte. I realized, je me suis rendu compte que, whatever. So it's just this idea that after the poetry past, we're taking things forward. Okay, we're not just done, because normally a poetry past, it's done. I did this to myself, finish. Okay? So what do we need to be a little bit aware of if we're really going to go up a level and start knocking at the door of advanced French? Is we need to be aware that a lot of these expressions that use de at the same time as the reflexive, we have to apply all our normal rules. So what is our normal rule when we use an expression with de? We have two rules, don't we? The first one is if you swap the subject and the object round, that de becomes don. And the more interesting one for our purposes right now is that if we keep the subject where it is, but we remove de and then the object, we have en. Example being, I need the woman, j'ai besoin de la femme, I need her, j'en ai besoin. Yeah, we can't say je l'ai besoin, I need it, or anything crazy like that, because it's avoir besoin de. So, j'en ai besoin. I talk about the book, je parle du livre, I speak about it, j'en parle. And we've dealt with en before. Let's do one more. I'm dealing with the project, je m'occupe du projet, I'm dealing with it, je m'en occupe. Okay, we've talked about that before. So if you get rid of de and what comes next, you will swap it for an en. Now, let's go up another level. I'm getting a bit London. Another level. If you need to do this in the past, then what you have nicely got with your je me suis, tu, t'es, il, c'est, nous sommes, vous êtes, ils, se sont, okay? You've learned that as a pattern, and I have told you, learn that as a pattern and then stick your reflexive past verb on the end. Je me suis lavé. Il s'est promené. He walked. Vous vous êtes réveillé. You woke up. Okay, we've done that. But what we're now saying is that if you use a reflexive verb that then has de after it, you have the possibility of sticking an en in the middle of your poetry. So instead of being je me suis, 3 ingredients, tu, t'es, 3 ingredients, the last 2 joined, il, c'est, nous sommes, vous êtes, ils, se sont, which will be written underneath, you now have, and pay attention for this, je m'en suis, tu t'en es, il s'en est, yeah, il s'en est, nous en sommes, or on s'en est would be better, vous vous en êtes, ils s'en sont. Okay? Let's go through those again. So what you are doing is you are sticking en after the reflexive. Now you might do that in the present. He speaks to me about it. Il m'en parle. Yeah. I speak to you about it. Je t'en parle. Yeah. He speaks to himself about it. Il s'en parle. Whatever. Nous en parle. Vous en. So we're used to in the mouth saying m'en, t'en, sont, nous en, vous en, sont. And I recommend that you do that and get that in your mouth. So if we do that, now let's try sticking them in the middle again of our poetry past. So I'm going to give you the original poetry, and then I'm going to give you a second and see if you can come up with it with the on in there, and then I'll say it to check that you're okay. So je me suis, stick on in there, je m'en suis. Okay, so I know you've all done lots of work on memorizing the poetries, but try and alter them now. So je me suis, je m'en suis, plus past word. Okay, and what we're talking about at the moment doesn't mean anything without the past verb. Okay, so tu t'es, tu t'en es. Okay, il s'est, il s'en est. Nous, nous sommes. Remember that the en is going to come after the reflexive part, yeah, and that's confusing there because two nous. So nous, nous en sommes. Okay, en s'en est we'd use. Vous, vous êtes. Vous, vous en êtes. Yeah, ils se sont. Ils s'en sont. Okay, so that is when you are using a verb which would have de in it. Okay, normally. And you've not used the object. For example, I got rid of my shoes. Je me suis débarrassé de mes chaussures. Je m'en suis débarrassé. I got rid of them. Now you're going, Luke, I can hear a them. Why am I not using les? Like I saw them. Je les ai vus. Je les ai vus. Because it's an expression with de. Okay, it's not a direct object. It's not a direct complement. Okay, it's not even indirect. It's basically with the preposition de. Okay, it's a kind of indirect, but the point is you've got the preposition de. Okay, there's this genitive thing going on there. Okay, so let's do another one. I looked after the project. Je me suis occupé du projet. And remember, we use en when we get rid of de and everything that comes after it. So, je m'en suis occupé. Yeah, I dealt with it. Je m'en suis occupé. Okay? Let's think of another one. We spoke to each other. On s'est parlé. On s'est parlé. We spoke to each other. We spoke to each other about our youth. On s'est parlé de notre jeunesse. I'm obviously still in the middle of my youth. We spoke to each other about it, so on s'est parlé de notre jeunesse. We get rid of de, we get rid of what comes next. On s'en est parlé. We spoke about it. Ah oui, on s'en est parlé. We spoke about it. You guys spoke about it. Vous vous en êtes parlé. Okay? Vous vous en êtes parlé, you spoke about it. Okay? So this is just a really obvious thing to be mindful of when you use expressions that are reflexive and have de. For example, the verb, and I'm about to do another video on memory, and I strongly recommend, especially you guys that are doing A-level, because this always comes up. The verb to remember, yes, we've got se rappeler, but we more specifically, when we use de, have se souvenir de. Okay? So I remember, je me souviens, I remember it, I remember of it. Yeah? Je m'en souviens. Okay? I remembered it, je m'en suis souvenu. So basically, if we're calling these poetry pasts, these are kind of like longer poetry and then the past. Okay? So je me suis souvenu de quelque chose ou je m'en suis souvenu. Je me suis occupé de quelque chose ou je m'en suis occupé. Nous nous sommes parlé de quelque chose ou nous nous en sommes parlé. Okay? Or on s'en est parlé. So I really hope that becomes clear. Now, final thing. There are expressions where we particularly use this all the time. So, for example, think to yourself, when you say je m'en or tu t'en, certain expressions you use more often than not. So I'm helping myself to it, je m'en sers. Yes, you can say se servir de, okay? So I helped myself to it, je m'en suis servi, okay? That's an expression, but ultimately that's an expression which is coming from the fact that you are helping yourself to something, okay? If you've got the expression s'en aller, which you will be familiar with, je m'en vais, tu t'en vas, il s'en va, nous nous en... what do we say? Nous nous en vont. What am I saying? Nous nous en allons, vous en allez, ils s'en vont, okay? So, on s'en va, we tend to say for the nous. So if you were saying